So this is the introduction for our bar review video. There's a couple things I have to tell you guys before we get started. So first of all, this video as a whole is going to be pretty long. If you're here to watch the shortest possible video, then I apologize for that. It won't be too short. So first of all, let's just go through the bars that we're going to be discussing. First is the Again Faster Klokov bar. It's about a $320 bar. Next one is the ZKC training bar, which is about an $800 bar. The next one is a Werksan training bar, which I believe is also about $800 or $900 bar. That's the Rogue bar, and there's another Rogue bar there as well. One's the American, one's the European bar. I don't believe they sell the European one yet. They're basically the same bar, so it's not something you need to worry about when you're buying on the website, but those are $525 bars in the more basic configuration. We have the fancier configuration, so they're a bit more expensive. The next bar is an old Eleiko training bar. Those could be bought new for $850, $900. Next bar with the green end cap is the Werksan Lion bar. That is a new bar from Werksan, more entry-level bearing bar, but it's about $600. One thing to note about this bar is it has a 225 kilo max, so it's actually it's not really meant to be a squatting bar if you're strong, but I think most people, there's no one really in the US who has to worry about the 225 kilo limit except maybe Kane Wilkes. Skipping over the Rogue bar, the next bar is the Eleiko Sport bar. That is about a $700 to $750 bar. Next bar, we included a couple what you would call more beater bars in this, just to kind of give some context when we do things like bar width testing and things like that. So the one on the left is kind of one of the first earlier Rogue bushing bars, and the other one is a York split sleeve bar. I don't know, probably 25, 30 years old. I think it's from sometime in the 80s. Not a good bar for weightlifting, either one of them really. Rogue doesn't really advertise this bar as being for weightlifting. That one and that one is what you'd use. So the next thing to talk about is the conflicts of interest that we have. So we basically have conflicts of interest with every bar you see here for the most part. So I don't want anyone to think that we're presenting ourselves as being unbiased, because we're not. So just to rattle off a few of them, with the Again Faster bar, we do business with Dmitry Klokov because we license his image for t-shirts. With the ZKC bar, I'm friends with the owner of ZKC USA, and he was my second shooter at the Kazakhstan World Championship, so he was there helping me take pictures. Just rattling down the list. With Werksan, one of our employees is coached by the owner of Werksan USA. With Rogue, Rogue sells hook grip knee sleeves. They sell some hook grip t-shirt designs. We do some other business with them as well. And then with Eleiko, we license their t-shirt, or basically their trademark for a t-shirt that we make. There's just all sorts of conflicts of interest. So I don't want you guys to think that we're presenting ourselves as unbiased. We're, going to do our best to just, say what we think about these bars, but we don't want there to be any secrets here. Also, in terms of how we got the bars, with the Klokov bar, we purchased that one for retail for $320. With the ZKC bar, that's a loaner bar from ZKC USA. We will give it back to them. And then the Werksan bar is owned by one of our employees. The two Rogue bars were given to us by Rogue with no deal, no be like, hey, we'll review this, we'll do that. They just said, hey, check them out, see what you think. And also, for those of you who saw our earlier video about Rogue versus Eleiko bearing bars, which we released, maybe a couple months back, the American bar has since been sent back to Rogue and has come back to us. So it's back now, and it spins a lot better, as you'll see later. It didn't spin quite as well in our last video because according to Bill, the owner of Rogue, the bar, basically this little end cap that you see here, the end cap screws in around the side, and that screw thread basically had something called Loctite on it, which people use to keep screws from slipping out or from the thing from basically unscrewing itself and falling out. And so apparently they'd put too much Loctite on, and the Loctite had gotten into the bearing itself, which is what ended up causing our bar to not spin that well. Okay, so moving on, with the old Eleiko bar there, we got that one on eBay. The Werksan Lion bar was given to us by Werksan to test. Rogue we already talked about. The Eleiko bar we bought. We bought that one for retail maybe a year ago. This one we just borrowed from a local CrossFit. And this York split sleeve bar I think I bought on Craigslist. I think I got 3 of them for something like $120. So they're cheap bars. And that's pretty much it as far as the introduction to the bars. Okay, so the next thing is we'll just talk a little bit about our methodology. So we tested a few things. We tested bar weight, we tested bar spin, and we tested bar whip. So for bar weight, we used 2 postal scales that we have, which have the capacity to weigh these things. Obviously, our postal scales are not perfect, and we're not claiming that we're measuring anything down to the gram with precision. We're not NASA. But we just did it just to get a feel for, hey, are these bars within range? You know, are some tending to be heavier than others? And it turned out that one of our scales was consistently about 35 grams heavier than the other one, which when you're dealing with these sorts of weights is pretty minimal. But if you were talking about competition bars, it would be a different story. But basically, we did the weights for both of them. We did both scales. Then in terms of bar whip, we use this little table here. So this table is basically just a really strong table. So we put the bars down the center channel. We put some wood and metal over it. We clamped it down using these gigantic C-clamps. Then we took some of those 25 kilo plates and that 2.5 kilo collar, and we clamped them in on the end. Or we clamped them into where they would normally go. And then we took another 2.5 kilo collar and we tied string. As you can see, there's actually still string in there. We tied string through it and we attached 30 kilos in weights to it. And then what we did was we cut the string. And then we used a high-speed camera to just measure how much the bar moved, and we put a grid behind it just so we'd be able to see exactly how much the bar moved. So that was how we measured whip. And we made purpose, this end of the table is purposely designed to sit just as the knurling starts, or right before the knurling starts, on an IWF spec bar. So basically we're talking about right in there, in the center of the shot right now. So basically it's designed to be right around where the shoulder would end on a bar that's just whipping in a normal competition. So that was the best thing that we could think of for that. And we pretty much took that idea from Rogue. They made a similar video. The difference with ours is that we did it with a lot more bars, and we're going to name all of the bars, whereas they said Rogue, EU competitor, and American competitor. So this is how we measured the spin. We put the bars down the center of the channel, and then we used that drill, and we took a little thing that we found at Home Depot. I'm not even sure what it is. And then we put an old bike tire around it. We glued it down using some Gorilla Glue. It's not moving. And then we spun basically the sleeve that was hanging off the end, basically sitting down this channel. So the sleeve was down here somewhere. And then we spun it at the same speed, and you'll see in our test that the bars moved at pretty much the same speed, and then we quickly took that off of it. And then we measured basically how many more rotations the sleeve made after we released that. So it was kind of a good, consistent way to look at exactly how free spinning a bar is. And we'll get into this a little bit more, but basically, just because a bar is free spinning does not mean it's actually a better bar per se. We're just trying to tell you, hey, what's a more free spinning bar and a less free spinning bar. And that's pretty much it in terms of our methodology. We also did a little real-time spin test where you can kind of see it, hear it, and we did it in a less controlled manner where we just kind of spun the bar hard. And then we're also going to talk a little bit at the end about the knurl. Knurl's a little bit harder to objectively test, but we'll go over it as well as we can. So hope you guys enjoy this video, and hopefully it will help some people in trying to figure out what sort of bar they want and what will be the best bar for them for the price and all that. Okay, we're here today to do some bar weight testing. As you can see, we have two scales here. These are scales that are meant to be basically postal weighing scales. They're scales that we use in our shipping process. By no means are they perfect scales. We don't represent that we're weighing things down to the exact gram here. All we're doing is just to say, listen, here's two scales. This will give you some idea of what these bars weigh and how accurate they are, but by no means is this a definitive answer as to what the bars weigh. So we're just going to go through one by one. We're going to show you what it weighs on one scale, what it weighs on the other scale. We've already done some preliminary weighing, and we can tell you the scales are not the same. So you'll definitely see number differences. So what we'll probably do is we'll just average the two to give you some idea of the results. All right, let's go. So the first bar is...
First bar is the ZKC training bar.
Okay, ZKC training bar. We zero the scale out and we put that piece of wood on there just to stop the bar from rolling. When we tried, it basically rolled too much. Okay, so that was 20 kilos and, what was it, 30 grams?
Yes.
So we'll zero this one out. So 20 kilos and let's call it 80 grams. So maybe minorly overweight. Once again, that's a training bar. Next bar.
This is the, again, faster Klokov bar.
So that's coming in a little bit light, 19.84. Okay, 19.88. Yeah, 88.
This is the Rogue bushing bar.
So this is the Rogue bushing 1.0 bar. These are $200-something bars. Not really represented to be weightlifting bars. 19.93. Okay, 19.96, let's say.
This is the Werksan training bar.
Okay, so Werksan is one of the IWF approved manufacturers. And this one is coming in at 20.008. So I guess the 8 grams off, which is pretty good. $20.05.
This is the York split sleeve bar from a while ago.
So this is a very old bar. This bar doesn't spin. Use this bar for squats, basically. Let's call it, I guess it's moving around a little too much to say for sure, but just 20.4, I guess, is probably what I'll call it. And also, this bar might have been intended to be a 45-pound bar, I'm guessing, because of the fact that it is 20.4-ish. So that's just to weigh that, because we are going to be doing some bar whip testing on this one, so we might as well throw that in there.
This one's the new Rogue EU bar.
So this is the Rogue bearing bar, made with European steel. Comes in a little bit light, about 88 grams off from 20. Still staying a little bit light, but also pretty close, about 40 grams off.
This one's an old Eleiko training bar.
This is an Eleiko training bar from who knows how long ago. Someone at one point told me how to figure that out, but I haven't done that. So that's pretty good. That's showing it's about 14 grams over, so that's pretty close. That's also a good indication that maybe these scales might be right. So this scale seems to be weighing a little bit heavier pretty consistently, but still pretty close, 50 grams over.
This one's the new Werksan Lion bar.
So this is a Werksan bar that's, I think, kind of meant to compete a little bit with the Rogue bar, with the, I guess the Eleiko Sport bar to a degree, and maybe some others like the Penlay bar or something like that. So 20.6, let's say. 06. Okay. Yep, as usual, this one's showing a bit heavier, but still 20.085, 85 grams over.
This one's the Eleiko Sport bar.
So this is the one that's above the XF bar, but is just below the training bar, but is still a bearing bar. Let's make sure it's not touching this. Okay, so this one's coming in at 20.006. I think that's the closest we've had so far. And if numbers hold true, it's going to come in maybe 30 heavier over here. Yep. So 20.03. So depending on which scale's right or whatever, this bar is definitely right up there with the most accurate we've seen so far.
This one is the new Rogue bearing bar.
So this is the bearing bar. This is the American one. Make sure it's not touching anything. And so this is coming in at about 40-ish grams light on this one. So this one might come in almost exactly right on the other scale. So still a little bit short, 20-ish grams short. But that wraps up our bar weight testing, and just in conclusion, we recognize that these scales aren't perfect. These are not, calibrated perfectly by any means, but we're just doing it because, frankly, we have the scales and we have the bars, and we might as well just get a look. I think from what we can tell, it seems like every bar is within reasonable tolerance of of what you would expect for a training bar. We're not trying to run the Olympics here, and most of you aren't in your training either. So that wraps up the weighing part. Thanks. So we're watching the bar whip in slow motion. First, we're going to start with it at a bit higher speed. Now we'll re-watch just the cutting part in slow motion. And something that I think everyone's going to be a little bit surprised about is there is no difference in bar whip. So I'll talk about this a bit more, but basically bar whip is not good or bad. Bar's just whip, and that's the bottom line. So a lot of you are probably not going to believe what I just showed you with the bar whip. A lot of people are going to insist, no matter what, that an Eleiko bar feels different or the Werksan bar feels different. So it might feel different. I'm not going to deny that. But the bottom line is that the whip is not different, and I'm going to show you why. So what you're watching now is basically the easiest way for me to show this to you is actually just show you what I'm seeing in Final Cut Pro with all of these videos synced up. So you're watching right now the only video that I have showing here, and this is every bar basically laid on top of each other. The only video that's showing right now is the Rogue American bar. So this isn't, real speed or whatever, but this is basically, this is with the bar weighted down. This is where we cut the string, and this is a zoomed in look at the bar moving, right? So that's just the whip. Compare this to any other bar, it moves exactly the same. So right now you can see this is at 100% opacity. That's basically how see-through it is. Here is the Eleiko Sport. Right now it's at 0%. Every other bar here is at 0%, except for the Rogue American right now. So if I put the Eleiko Sport up to 100%, all you're watching is the Eleiko Sport. That's it. So now what happens? Now I put the Eleiko Sport down to 50%. That means you're watching half Eleiko Sport, half Rogue American. So the question is can you see any difference? The answer is you can see a slight difference. The only difference you can see is that the collar is a bit further out. So if we adjust this to try and make the collars look exactly the same, you can see this is it. This is showing all Eleiko Sport. This is showing all Rogue American. Yes, the bars are slightly different. The weights get placed slightly further out on the Eleiko Sport because the collar is a bit wider. That is the only difference. If we put this back at 50% or so you're seeing about half of each bar, I guess I would need to put this down a bit. So now you're seeing about half of each bar. I'm not really sure exactly what means you're seeing half of each bar, but the bottom line is you can see both bars. This is before they get released. This is as it gets released. This is the bounce. So you might say, it's just a coincidence. Eleiko Sport and Rogue, they're both high quality steel. Let's try an older bar or something that might have bent over time or this or that. So let's take this Werksan bar. This is an old bar. Put it up. You can watch only the Werksan bar for right now. Starts here. Goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. All right, put it back here. Put it back to 50%. We're now seeing half of the Werksan bar, half of the Rogue American bar. Let it go. Goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. You can't see the bars separating at all. In fact, because these bars have about the same size collar, you're not even seeing any difference in the collar. The only difference you're seeing is that one has the little stick here on the collar and one has the stick here. That's the only difference. So if I put this back to 0, look at any bar. Look at the Klokov bar. Klokov against, let's say Klokov against Eleiko Sport. Put this down to 0. Put the Eleiko Sport up. Right now you're looking at the Klokov bar. Now you're looking at the Klokov bar and the Eleiko Sport bar. Drag this through the timeline. Okay, so this is before they get released. You can see they have slightly different collar sizes. So you're seeing basically basically the collars on the end of the bar in slightly different places. Goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. You don't see any separation. So here's the thing. I'm going to put this video up. There's going to be people in the comments that are going to say, no, like, trust me, young man, I've been using an Eleiko sport bar since 1985, or I've been using this so-called Schnell bar from Germany, or they'll name a bar and they'll swear it's different. The bottom line is, don't believe the hype. There's no difference in bar whip. Rogue Fitness did a test on this as well. You can go look at it on their YouTube channel. There is no difference in bar whip. Bars do whip, and timing the whip in the jerk is absolutely important, and bar whip absolutely will change if you were to place these weights differently. If we were to place some weights on the end, some weights on the inside, do that, make other changes basically to how we load it, how much weight we put on the end, all that stuff, of course the whip will change. And of course the whip will be different on a 200 kilo clean and jerk versus 150 versus 100. That's not in dispute. What's in dispute is Eleiko whip different from Werksan whip, different from Klokov whip, different from Rogue whip? The answer is absolutely not. And just as one final example, this is the Rogue bushing bar. This is the $200-something bar, not a high-end bar. Even Rogue would probably tell you it's not a high-end bar. So let's just, we'll leave the Eleiko at 100. So right now Rogue's at 100. This is only the Rogue bar you're looking at. Starts here, goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. All right, so what do you want to compare it to? Let's start with the Eleiko Sport Bar. Okay, so that's at 100, which means we're seeing it right now. Let's go back up to that Rogue bushing bar, put it at 50, so we'll watch the two of them together. So keep in mind, this is what people think is the class of weightlifting bars against what people think is a CrossFit bar that they would never consider doing a heavy clean on. They both start here, gets released, they go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. You notice a big difference? I don't. You know, do you see a little bit of maybe difference at the end point, or maybe you can see one separate a little bit? All right, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm not seeing much of a difference here. The bars deflect the same amount, and the bars move at the same speed. And that's the bottom line. Anyone who tells you differently, it's in their head. Until someone shows me proof that bars whip differently, the bottom line is that they don't whip differently, and you're basically, when you're looking for a quality bar, you're looking for other things other than so-called good whip. This is a slow motion look at our controlled bar spin test. So what we did was we used our drill to spin the bars up to the same speed. They basically all did actually spin the same speed. We'll show you an image of that later on, or maybe just a video of that later on that'll give you a better view of that. What we did was we removed them as fast as we possibly could, and then we just waited for them to stop spinning. And we've ordered these in the order in which they stop spinning. The ZKC stopped spinning first, upper left. The old Eleiko will stop next, so on and so forth. The Rogue American will stop last. So there's a couple things we want to say here. First of all, freer spinning is not always better. A lot of people think that way because there's a lot of bad bars that do not spin. But that also doesn't mean it's better. A lot of times a freer spin bar can actually be harder to stabilize. All right, so you can see ZKC disappeared. A lot of times a freer spinning bar can actually be harder to stabilize overhead, which is a bad thing. It can cause injuries, this, that, and the other. So what you're really looking for is you're looking for a bar that'll spin well enough for you to be able to get around on the clean or around on the snatch. And if you think about it, that's only half of a rotation. You're not going to, I mean, how are you going to spin the bar 4 rotations? You don't need a bar to spin. I don't remember the exact number, but I think this Rogue American bar, probably spun around like 12 times or something. You don't need a bar to spin 12 times in order to do a lift. And at the end of the day, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about doing weightlifting. We're not talking about a bar spinning contest. So the reason we're doing this is strictly just to show you how fast these bars retain the speed, just so you get some idea of how free spinning a bar it is. By no means are we saying, hey, the, again, faster bar is better, or the Rogue American bar is better, or the ZKC bar sucks. The ZKC bar is going to be used at the Olympics. The bar doesn't suck. It's a good bar. It's just that you're not going to get as free spinning a bar as you're going to get with some other bars. So as you can see, the Rogue American bar is still going. It's still going. This is in slow motion, so it looks like it's moving slower than it actually is in real life. I think now it's actually stopped, so this is going to disappear. But we'll also show you some real-time spinning, just so you can get a feel for that as well. Okay, so you just watched those bars all spinning in slow motion, and you have some more questions. So this is actually the editing timeline for that particular segment of the video. Here are the titles. If you're not familiar with Final Cut Pro, that doesn't really matter. This will still be pretty easy to understand. So this fourth set of little tick marks, that's the spot where we released basically the force. That's where we took the drill off. So this shows the prior 3 rotations. Each tick mark is a rotation. So as you can see, it's true the bars were not spinning at exactly the same speed, especially the ZKC bar was a little bit tougher to spin. You can see that one. Basically it took this long. It took from the 11 second mark roughly up to the 21 second mark. Keep in mind this is in slow motion. It didn't actually take 10 seconds to make 3 spins. But that's about how long it took at the speed that we're recording at to do those 3 spins. Whereas some other bars, for instance, the Rogue European bar, that was 12-14. So yes, the bars were not spinning at exactly the same rate. We don't have a way, unfortunately, to spin them at exactly the same rate. But as you can see here, I mean, that's 1 spin out. They're all pretty much within that yellow line. This is 2 spins out. They're pretty close. 3 spins out, a little bit more deviation, but the bottom line is that they were going approximately the same speed. And the reason why we're putting this out there without, kind of maybe coming up with a more elegant solution that would result in them going the exact same speed, the reason we're doing that, or the reason we're putting this out there without that, is just because this doesn't matter. Whether these bars have 1 or 2% spin differences that we're not showing here, it doesn't matter. The point of this is not to show you, oh, this has 1.7%, more or less spin or whatever. The point is for you just to get an idea of, hey, are you getting a free spinning bar, or are you not getting a free spinning bar? Because some people want one, some people want the other one. Also, another important thing to see here is this last, you might say, well, this looks impossible. All right, well, this is one, this is where we released it, 1 spin, 2 spins, 3 spins. There's no way it did a 4th spin. You're right. All that is, that last tick mark, for all of these, is just where the bar actually just stopped moving. So this just shows you, it's, the Eleiko Sport, the ZKC, the Klokov, Werksan Training, Rogue Euro, Old Eleiko, everything. It shows you how many spins it made. So as an example, with the Rogue American, we're at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 and some. So that made 17 and some. The ZKC made 3 and some. So, and judging by how long it took to make this 3rd rotation, it probably only made 3 and a tiny bit. So, I mean, that's a big difference. If you want something that's free spinning, then you're not going to want the ZKC bar. If you're someone who wants something that spins a bit less, has a little more stability maybe, won't rotate as much with you in the bottom position, maybe you want the ZKC bar. Are you concerned, maybe, let's say you're a CrossFit gym owner and you want Klokov bars, and you're just not sure, hey, are they going to be free spinning, or are they just going to be kind of your average, bar that does not spin all that well? Well, the bottom line is that the Klokov bar looks to be pretty free spinning in all of our tests. And you'll see more of that in the next segment. But hopefully this explains kind of some of the data behind our tests and how we kind of decided this was a good thing to put out there. And let's go on to the next part. So in addition to our more controlled spin test, just so you can see it, hear it, maybe you feel like you get a better feel for bars and the consistency of the spin or something like that, we're going to spin each bar just by hand, just so you can see it and hear it, and it's just another look at the spin of these bars, so you don't necessarily have to get it in your hand to get a feel for it. So this first bar is the ZKC training bar, and we're just going to use our hand to spin it hard. All right, Mike. Give it one more. Hold on one sec. So that is the ZKC training bar. Not super free spinning, but a pretty consistent and smooth spin. Okay, next bar is the again faster Klokov bar. Give it one more spin. So it has a really nice sound. You can really hear the spin through the whole sleeve of the bar, and it's pretty free spinning. Okay, this is the Werksan training bar. This bar has been used and abused for a while. Here we go. Now let's give it one more. Did it just lock up?
Yeah.
All right, let's give it one more. I'm not editing this out of the video. Well, there you go. Werksan training bar. Spins pretty nice. Sometimes it might lock up on you. It's actually something I've heard about. I've never seen it happen before, though, so I'm glad we got that on video. Okay, this is the Rogue bearing bar with European steel. One more. Pretty free spinning. Consistent spin. Spins nice. This is the Eleiko bar, old training bar. Bought this used. It's apparently from 1993, so this bar is old, but still in pretty good shape. Let's give it a spin. Make some funny noises. This thing probably got pretty abused at one point. Makes a lot of funny noises, but it actually still spins pretty nice. Maybe it needs some maintenance. Maybe I need to contact Eleiko. This is the Werksan Lion bar. It's their $600 bar that's a bit lower end than their training bar, maybe similar to the Eleiko Sport. Actually spins really nice, has a nice sound. You can hear the whole spin through the end, and seems pretty good. This is the Rogue American bearing bar. Sorry, I mean American steel bearing bar. And this is the bar that, if you've seen our prior videos, or our prior bar review video that we did a couple months back, this was the bar that did not really spin as well as the European bar. We since have basically sent this back to Rogue. They made a repair to it, which basically involved removing some Loctite that had gotten into the bearing from one of the end caps. And it seems to spin better, so let's give it a spin. All right, let's go one more. Really nice spin. spin. Hard to beat that. Okay, this is the less than 1 year old Eleiko Sport Bar. Do one more shot. Nice spin, classic Eleiko spin. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about the knurl. As you saw in the rest of the video, we don't have the same sort of means to test the knurl as we do in the other parts, where we can kind of use a high-speed camera and we can apply the exact same amount of force, this, that, and the other. We thought about a couple ways of testing the knurl where we would try to evenly put some sort of fabric over it with the same amount of pounds on top of it and pull it back and forth and see how much the fabric frayed. But at the end of the day, all the ideas sounded pretty bad. We just couldn't come up with a really good way to test this. If anyone has an idea, let us know. We're all ears. However, just from our opinion, this is the Klokov bar closest to us. The Klokov bar has smooth knurl. It's not going to chew up your hands. It may seem a little bit hard to hold on to for some people. However, one thing that's interesting about the Klokov bar is the center knurl is maybe even more aggressive than this knurl. This knurl on the outside is just not that aggressive at all. It's not going to bother your hands at all. The center knurl, if you're not used to having center knurl, if you've been lifting on bars at CrossFit for the last 3 years and you've never lifted on a bar with center knurl, this could very well bother your neck. Not permanently, but you're definitely going to get irritation. I'm not sure why they made it like that. Again, Faster said something about how it was actually designed by Klokov, and that's why they made it that way. I don't really know. Another thing to note is that an IWF spec bar does not have this other ring here, I guess for powerlifting or whatever it's for. And the Klokov bar does have that. So if that's going to bother you, if you tend to grip right here in your cleans and that's right in the middle of it and you're just not used to it, then so be it. So that's the Klokov bar. The ZKC bar. The ZKC bar is definitely more aggressive than the Klokov bar, especially out here, and it's less aggressive than the Klokov bar in the center knurl. So this is more than that. The ZKC bar, however, is not anywhere near as aggressive as a Eleiko knurl. This is Werksan. Werksan, I would say, is a little bit more aggressive than the ZKC. It's got a little more bite to it. My finger definitely moves slower over it. I can't really get my finger to bite into the ZKC knurl, and this is just moving easily. No, could do that all day. It wouldn't hurt my finger. This, it would eventually start to hurt. This one, it would hurt a lot faster. Now the Rogue knurl is, I personally, just my personal opinion, I like the Rogue knurl the best. The Rogue knurl is consistent, it's grippy, it's not super sharp. I think if I was in a competition, the Eleiko knurl's great because you're never gonna lose grip of an Eleiko bar, that's for sure. But if you're training every day, this Rogue knurl is I think it's nice. Some people might think it's too aggressive if your hands just really aren't conditioned, but I would almost say that the Rogue knurl is pretty similar. If I feel the two of them, pretty similar to the Werksan knurl. And ZKC and Klokov are way lighter. The Klokov bar is probably the lightest knurl I've ever felt on a weightlifting bar, and even compared to one of these Rogue bars. So this is the Rogue bushing bar that a lot of you have probably used at a CrossFit. This is more aggressive than the Klokov knurl, for sure. It's really not even close. It's definitely more aggressive. So these two bars are the same. The American, European Rogue bars. This is the old Eleiko bar. This one's really smooth, but who knows what happened to this bar, because I bought this bar after it was already 20-something years old. This is the Werksan Lion bar. The Werksan Lion bar actually has a really nice knurl. It's more aggressive than the Rogue, but only by a little bit. I would give it maybe 10 to 15% more aggression than the Rogue. This is a really nice bar for weightlifting. It's a little bit weird. It has a sticker on it that says loading, I don't know if you can see this, loading capacity, let me see if I can get us to focus. Kind of. Loading capacity 125 kilos. Werksan told me it's actually 225, and then it also says no warranty on it, but Werksan told me it has a 30-day warranty, so it's kind of a weird bar. Even 225 kilos is a bit of a weird concept. And so lastly, the Eleiko knurl. This is the Eleiko Sport Bar. Definitely the most aggressive knurl of any of the bars here. If you're not used to weightlifting training or using a weightlifting bar, you're not gonna like the Eleiko bar for the first couple weeks. That's for sure. It's gonna take some time to get used to it, and it's gonna be painful. That being said, there's nothing quite like the grippiness of Eleiko knurl, in my opinion. So that's kind of where we're at with the knurl. Except for the Klokov bar, they're all pretty smooth in the center knurl. As I feel through them, especially the Eleiko. Eleiko's super smooth in there. Lion doesn't have center knurl. The Klokov actually probably has the most aggressive center knurl, as I feel through them. The only one that could even really compete would be the Rogue. But I don't think so. I think the Klokov has the most aggressive center knurl. So that's pretty much it on the knurl. Hopefully just that little bit will help you make a decision. Sorry we don't have a more objective test. Okay, so back here, this is the conclusion part, and as you might suspect, there is no answer as to what is actually the best bar, because it all depends on your situation. I do think there are a few standouts in my opinion, especially when it comes to performance for price and what sort of purpose you're going to use them for. Personally, I think that the Klokov bar is the best bearing bar that I've seen for the money, hands down. Now, Again Faster has another bar called the Again Faster Team Barbell. I think they're sending us one for the next test, so I'll kind of see how that compares to the Klokov bar, which is even cheaper. I think it's around $200 or a little bit more. The Klokov bar is $320. I think at this point, if I were to be, let's say, starting a CrossFit gym and I wanted to buy a whole bunch of barbells, frankly, I would probably buy the Klokov bars instead of kind of like the cheaper bushing bars. The standard thing to buy these days would be, let's say, the Rogue 2.0 bar, which granted is better than this. That's not to say this is a bad bar. It serves its purpose, but the thing is that if you were to get a Klokov bar, hey, that would serve both purposes, so that's pretty cool. I do think that the Klokov bar's center knurl is kind of a curious choice. I think that on the one hand, they were going for CrossFitters with this bar, which is fine, and they were also trying to target weightlifters, but I don't know. I don't think that they need to have that aggressive of a center knurl on it. But overall, I think if I were starting a CrossFit, or if I was starting a weightlifting club on a bit more of a budget, 100% I would buy a bunch of the Klokov bars, because it's really hard to beat $320 for a barbell of that quality. However, I do think personally that the Rogue bar is better strictly from my perspective, and that's just because I like knurling that has a little more to it than the rest of the Klokov bar. So if I was starting a weightlifting club, I would buy the Rogue bars for $5.25. I think that yeah, it's $200 more per bar, but I just think the knurling, and you're really, the spin's pretty much the same as the Klokov bar. Obviously, as we discussed, the whip's all the same. They're all pretty much right within line. I think that both companies hopefully will stand behind their bars. I mean, I've dealt a lot with Rogue, and they seem like they'll stand behind their stuff. And so I think if you're starting a weightlifting club, the Rogue bar is probably the way to go. Things like this Werksan Lion bar, frankly, to me, it's a weird bar. I can't figure out what market they were trying to hit with it. And don't get me wrong, it's a nice bar. Like, it spins great, the knurling feels great. There's no center knurl, which is a little bit strange, and it's built by Werksan, which is one of the IWF approved companies. But it's just strange to me to have a bar that's at a 225 kilo limit for $600. I just don't see. I don't know. I can't come up with a reason in my head why I would buy that over, let's say, the Rogue bar. I mean, the Rogue bar, they'll basically warrant that thing for, I don't know what the official warranty is on it, but knowing Rogue, you could probably come back to them a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line, and if something was wrong with their construction and their manufacturing, they'll probably fix it or replace it. Whereas Werksan says this Lion bar has a 30-day warranty. I don't know. I can't really see buying the Lion bar, and that's not to say it's not a good bar. I just think for the dollars and performance, there are probably better bars out there. And if you really like more aggressive knurl, obviously the Eleiko bars are great. And the one thing that Eleiko has going for it over a lot of these other ones, especially the Klokov bar, especially the Rogue bar, is Eleiko bars they've been making bars for so long that while, yeah, the whole thing about, that special Eleiko whip is definitely not a thing, the bottom line is that Eleiko still has that reliability behind it. People have been using Eleiko bars that are in great shape for 25, 30, 35 years. It's hard to beat that, and you just don't know what an Again Faster Klokov bar is going to look like in 5, 10, 15 years. Maybe it'll look great, maybe it won't. None of us know, including the people at Again Faster. And in terms of some of these older bars, like the two here that we tested, the older Werksan, the older Eleiko bar, yeah, the Werksan locked up on one of our real-time spin tests. Yeah, the Eleiko's making funny noises. The bottom line is that with any bar, if I were to make a post on Hook Grip and say, hey, this bar is the best bar, guaranteed 5-10 people would come into the comments and be like, my friend had that bar sucked, like it locked up on him 2 weeks later, blah, 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 blah. The bottom line is that these are all, they're pieces of equipment that get large amounts of force put into them, and they're moving pieces of equipment. I mean, some of them are going to fail, some of them are going to have problems, some of this, some of that. So don't be put off because one person says, my Rogue bar, I had this problem or that problem. Just go with a company that tends to stand behind their products. I think Eleiko stands behind their bars. I know Rogue stands behind their products, and I don't know about the rest of them. They're probably good. I've only had good experiences with the rest of them, but the bottom line is that I wouldn't say, that Werksan bar locked up, Werksan sucks, or that Eleiko bar makes funny noises, Eleiko sucks. I mean, they're old bars. They've probably been put through stuff they're not meant to be put through, and you can't go off of one experience or one bad story or one good story. And that's pretty much it. Bottom line is we just wanted to put this information out there because a lot of this isn't out there in this format, and hopefully we'll be back doing another one of these in May. It sounds like a bunch of people want to send us bars to do a similar sort of test with, so we'll see what we get, and we'll be back.